right.
Like you just said, I guess it's just time to wing it. Better late than never. Back at you through time and space on this little race to mankind's #1 achievement.
We're going to reel it back a little bit and go back to the original format rather than try to create drama for you, because these achievements and obstacles that humanity has to overcome to get us to where we are right now, you're probably not watching if you're not interested, and if you're here listening, these are some topics that you probably really dig. So
yeah, you've come this far, so follow us even further down the rabbit hole, and we've really put the madness into mankind madness at this point. Hashtag, the high-low no-show. He's Hajas, I'm Hallro. We've been doing a 64-team tournament. We had 64 teams, I think, take 8 off already. So we're down to 56, and we intend today to get down to 32. And that's basically saying one round is complete. If you brought, some other bullshit episode the last time around, totally different zeitgeist this time. Totally different.
We haven't even released that episode.
Well,
I've been thinking about it.
That's the best part about it.
And it's going to get released, even though it was recorded a month ago.
Yeah, we had to hit the drop button like, nope.
Yeah.
Too much bullshit.
Putting ourselves out there a bit. But
that's what happens when you film on weeknights. So this is a little weekend, a little Sunday fun day. We're going to be a little more relaxed and to the point, I guess, is more of the point. We're not doing any funny business this time. We're just going to basically look at the matchups, discuss, and move on.
Yeah.
With the intention of, as we do, just pare it down. 2 goes to 1. 1's facing up. The next matchups are fantastic. So just as a recap from what we did last episode, we did 4 matchups in Paradigm Shift and 4 matchups up in Discovery Bracket. With Fire beating out Sports. No surprise there. Fire #1 seed. Satellites and Sailing went down to the wire, but Satellites crashed and burned while Sailing sailed off into the sunset. So Sailing, as a 9 seed, is going to face Fire next game. You got Petroleum versus Salt, and the Salt, basically withered away, and the Petrol was here to stay. So that's a 5 seed. And they're going to take on Penicillin, the 4 seed. So that's totally predictable right there, the 5 and the 4. Petrol and Penicillin.
Yeah, no upset. Sailing minor upset. If
minor
you
upset, yeah.
Call it that.
So, that's kind of the weight of the world right there on us trying to determine what goes forward. So, Fire, Sailing, Petrol, and Penicillin moving on in the Discovery Bracket. And remember, there's Discoveries, Inventions,
Wild Cards,
and Paradigm Shifts. So, I think we'll probably focus on Wild Cards today, but down here in Paradigm Shifts, we have a few winners. Mass Production Factory Farms being a clear winner over Paper. Take that, Papyrus. So that's a 6 seed, actually. But 6 over 11, you'd expect it. The Magna Carta, beat out Bow and Arrow, which is kind of lamentable, because Bow and Arrow is one of the few paired up things that you had to have.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other.
Even despite having a team of 2, they still couldn't pull it off.
That's true, right. So they really bumped it up. So the 3rd seed, Magna Carta, is going to face Mass Production next round. And then we've got the Atom Bomb blowing up the spot, number 7, over Medicine and Surgery. So too bad for the rest of us in humanity that Medicine and Surgery's fallen by the wayside.
You never know about how these things are going to unravel.
No one's getting any care from here on out.
Surgery probably most of the time is going to be a top 4 or 5 seed.
Right.
They just had an off season. I think with just too many people dying in hospital these days, botched surgeries going on and tit jobs, kind of starts losing its credence. Although some would say that it should be higher up there with these implants going on these days. But hey, that's why they play the game.
Right. You didn't want a single payer healthcare, nationalized, socialized system. You don't get it. No more medicine.
Obamacare. Blame it on Obamacare.
Right. Blame it on Obamacare. And once again, politics, the interloper, the late bloomer, coming to the
as a nail biter of a
nail
game.
biter. Biggest upset so far. Probably broke a lot of brackets and a lot of hearts. politics taking out agriculture. So we're left without any medicine and any food.
Hopefully it's just not a foreshadowing of our species that come here because,
Well, the priorities are as they may.
So the good thing about it, Hall, is there is still, that's what 8 teams are out so far. That still leaves us 56 amazing accomplishments that we have come to and that are still out there vying for that number 1 spot.
The last place is the first place. Yeah. The last spot is the first place. I guess we'll just say it better. So we're kind of trying to get our momentum back up here. We need to build a little bit more rapport with you, the audience. But once again, we need to kind of sort out what exactly we're doing here, Aegis. So I think we're just going to pick a bracket and go down. We labored and belabored the point on all these big things, and then we put them kind of haphazardly into a matchup bracket. And that's how the cookies crumble. Really, agriculture and medicine, you're out. What else is going to be out today?
Yeah.
Stay tuned. So, flip a coin. We can either do invention or wild card.
Let's get into the wild card.
The wild card. We're going to go to the wild card bracket, way out west, the wild, wild west. And from 1 to 16, there are 16 players here, 8 games paired up. And I think we can find out definitively 8 winners and 8 losers. Yeah. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So let's just give them a heads up of these matchups that will be discussed. We have number 1, Love Hate, playing Mythology, 1 versus 16. Number 8, Throwing Rocks, going against number 9, Architectural. No one probably would ever have created that matchup other than probably me in the entire world. That's the uniqueness of the 8-9 matchup we have going on. Number 5, Erotica, favorite team of many of you perverted fools out there, playing number 12, Sugar, fittingly.
Pour some sugar on me.
And then we have number 4, Timekeeping. Got to keep on time all the time. Against number 13, the up-and-comer Artificial Intelligence.
AI, yes. It might not be a big deal now, but it will be a big deal later.
It will. So, yeah. Can they get their first win in the bracket today? We'll find out here. Number 6, War going against perhaps the greatest warlord of all time, Genghis Khan.
War! What is it good for? Absolutely, Genghis Khan. That's who it's good for. So, yeah, this is a really interesting matchup, I think. Through no, predetermined...
and probably some of my bias again. Right. Probably my bias showing up again in the wild cards. But
we wanted to make it happen.
Hey, that happens.
War versus the warlord.
Number 3, Music, against number 14, Fame. It's another one of those... what side of the coin do you land on that one?
And also what side of the corn, because there's some really corny music and corny famous people, so let's figure that shit out.
Number 7, Humor, against number 10, what is sometimes the most serious entry in the bracket, Meditation. I didn't want that matchup to happen this soon, but
it's kind of too bad.
It happens. And
are we be grounded or we're going to be belly aching? One of the two.
And to round off the wildcard bracket, we have number 2, Religion, against the number 15 up-and-coming team.
Say it with me. Memes. Gotta love me some memes. So maybe we just start out right there and kind of throw everything into perspective here. So, in everybody's day-to-day life, they have a Facebook, and now they got a Twitter, and they got an Instagram. So Instagram gave us the best platform for memes, which are essentially user-edited stock file photos with catchy circumstances like when Nance tells you it's time for a few cold boys before you go to Applebee's for dinner or something like that, and a look you give her. So it's just funny because they're so apropos, but they are every man's humor and every man's statement. So it's not just funny. Sometimes it's poignant, but that's up against what could be one of humankind's greatest achievements or greatest detriments is religion, because religion brings a lot of people to the fold, but what it's most famously known for is creating division and persecution and
that's
ridiculous.
That's definitely the side. That's one side of the coin.
Yeah.
The other side, I think most people out there that follow some sort of religion do it because they truly think they are doing good for the world. And then you have the 10% out there. It's extreme in one way, trying to push their ideals onto other people or straight up kill them if that happens to be. But I think 90% of the world out there is like trying their best to be good based on
So
that
we had
concept.
spiritualism and meditation above, like we kind of tried to dovetail those. So spiritualism and religion aren't necessarily...
they're intertwined, but they're not necessarily
they're not the same thing. You either worship, in the house of God, or you worship, at the beach, or whatever. You can find many ways to reach your divinity, whatever it is. It's when these guys come out of the bushes and say, God, talk to me, this is the rules, do what I say, not what I do.
The interesting thing about it is that's the Western side of religion. The Eastern side of religions are actually more what we probably term spirituality.
Right, spirituality.
Like a Buddhist
Buddhism,
isn't out there. There's not a group of Buddhists really trying to take over the world based on that. Not like the current situation with Islam. Not like the Crusades, just taking over the where we live now.
It's still happening, man.
Still happening on at least
Israel
subtle,
and Palestine.
level.
They act like there's two states. It's one place. But their main division, that people are pretty much all cut from probably the same DNA after a while, is their main division is either you worship Muhammad or you worship, Yahweh or something like that. And it's different for only that reason, because monotheism is almost identical around the world. Like it's just like.
But are we talking about monotheism or are we talking about religion?
Well,
because if we're going to talk about religion, you have to put Hinduism and Buddhism.
Right, let's put Hinduism
in there
fantastic.
as well, which are not monotheistic in the Western religion sense at all.
There. Yeah.
Buddhism.
And they might be the saving grace, is what we're saying about all this shit. Like, sure, they have their own misgivings about non-believers or whatever, but maybe they follow their own path. But anyways, we got religion, and religion's value in humanity is probably no other animals out there thinking, hey, there's somebody else responsible for my fate, my destiny. No other animal believes probably that what created things, but no other animal's also in tune with this life force like the Buddhists and the Taoists are, where they're trying to consider the bigger picture of things.
Or, being, I see the raccoon, I am the raccoon type of thing. As extreme as
Rocky
that
raccoon
type of thought seems to be. Without a doubt, their grip on the world, even to this day, is... even though it seems like it's starting to cut ties a little bit, you know, right? Like, we're very secular now. I would consider myself fairly secular. I'm interested in these religions and spirituality and all that stuff. I'm highly interested in a lot of it, and on the practical side of actually doing it, I think is worth looking into and seeing what it's all about. And at the same time, it's hard for me to think that religion as we know it today is going to be here 100 years from now.
That's where I'm at. That's why memes is chipping away at the edifice of religion and other things, fake news, what have you. It's just people are basically spouting out their own reality in memes, whereas you're not stopping to consider somebody else's prescribed reality, which is, I keep on, bookmarking what we're talking about religion as in Western religion, or the American experience with religion, which is not true, but there's plenty of religions. The shamanistic stuff there down in South America or Central America, the Native Americans, they had their own kind of religions. They're probably closer to the truth because they're basically living off the land, subsisting the land, believing in the higher powers that kind of reward or punish
the sun. Right. George Carlin had a great little joke on the sun. If I'm going to worship anything, I'm going to worship the sun. Because guess what? If the sun doesn't come up tomorrow, you're going to have to pray to God to have the sun come up, or you're done. There's no. I don't think there's any other way. We can burn some coal and oil for a while, but eventually that's gonna.
It's just curious to see what's the next thing after the religions, because then you had Mormonism and LDS is exploding in America, and globally too, because they make such missionary work such a big deal. So, is religion dying or is it expanding? Is there going to be another crazy guy who says I got the word from God, or is education and knowledge, is that really eradicating the need to be a believer in God necessarily? Because, Ghostface Killer said it best, God only punishes the believers. And he might be a believer himself. But basically it's saying to, you start believing in all this stuff when you're under siege, when when things aren't making sense. It becomes much more important. And then things start to unravel even further, perhaps. It's like God doesn't do a great job of rewarding anybody, unless you're Joel Osteen or some mega church fucker.
True that, but the other thing that religion has going for it is, like, we could probably have this whole podcast right here just talking about the merits and the cons against religion and certain aspects of it. There's a lot to talk about. It's very in depth. It has a lot of subject matter. And just switching back to memes,
let's flip back to memes.
It's the modern day comic strip. No one picks up a newspaper these days to just see a little bit of lightness in their day, and maybe that's what religion really needs to be: have a little bit more lightness than the seriousness.
Beetle Bailey, no, no one has a long. Their attention spans are gone anyway, so it's just scroll. Oh, what's that fun? The memes are communicable disease because you share them with all your friends, and then they become viral.
Yeah.
And memes have no mercy, and some it's too soon, and memes are as complicated as they can get. If you don't know your beta meme, then you don't know some of these other mega memes that are coming out, because they're all derivative, and it's becoming a language of its own. And I'm even blown away by some of it because I don't get it. But memes are the future. Religion is a present concern. It should always be for anybody who needs to explain away how the hell they got here, why they're here, and what they're supposed to be doing with themselves. The double-edged sword of religion is just too much for me to bear. I think it's been as much of a of a destructive force, as much, if not more, than it has been of a global force for good. No matter what it is, it's kind of a wash. It's kind of like religion. You do yourself. The Taliban being an example. I don't know, right-wing Christian people being an example.
Yeah, I mean, we killed off all the Indians here in this country.
What the Israelis are doing, to Palestinians, that's an example. It's just people use it as an excuse to be mightier than the other person and to gain effect. But it's really, I think it stemmed out of ignorance back in the day. It created some good social mores, created good behavior and this and that. And now it's just used as basically a backdrop to distinguish people and be more of a divisive thing. That's how I see it. So I don't know. But maybe I just haven't been to church in a while. When was the last time you were in church?
Years, decade probably, easily. I mean, traditional church outside of place to meditate. I mean, I guess, when I traveled and I was in India, I went to a lot of temples.
Right, temples and church, huh?
Yeah, definitely. I
Hinduism's funky. Ganesh and... what's
very different sort. It's so different than the Western mindset of. It's easy for us to look at it and be like, "There's hundreds of gods," but I think what I came to understand, or at least what worked for me whenever I was very into that aspect of it, was there, like all the elephant god Ganesh, or the monkey god Hanuman, or whatever it be, the other human avatars, that they're just attributes of being a person. They're just a specific attribute of, like, kind of an archetype, I think, as some philosophers have put it, and they're just showing how that archetype plays itself out whenever it's in its, like, pure, powerful form. That's how I kind of looked at it, rather than, I'm praying to an elephant, which part of me thinks that's as ridiculous as really praying to anything. And then I think I've mentioned on this podcast, what it really comes down to, for me, I'm Zen all the way. Like Alan Watts is my favorite philosopher. We're all God. That's how I look at it. We all come from a source. We come from some. I don't know where I came from, but I don't think there's like different entities out there creating different people. Maybe there is, but I think there is like kind of a oneness that we all come from, and I don't know unless I see someone. If I see a guy walking on the water down Pacific Beach here, I'm a believer. Like, trust me, like.
That's the shit. I mean, Joseph Smith goes out in the forest. Sorry, I lost my golden tablets. Like whatever. It's just, this shit's ridiculous. It's good storytelling is kind of what it is, which is kind of why I think it's ironic that through no fault of our own, memes and religion just got placed up together. I'm like, well, you and I both know, I don't think memes has a chance.
It doesn't have. But, like, about 80% of this conversation was religion, right? So religion just on that.
Religion forward. Memes has a chance. And, my last point about religion is they just have some really ugly names for people who are not religious. Agnostic. Atheist.
Agnostic's not a bad word.
It's a really ugly word, though. It's not a bad word. It's not bad to be agnostic. It's just, it sounds ugly.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's one of the points.
It doesn't fall in my ears like that.
So, moving on. So, no surprise, 2 seed wins. Fuck it. That's the way that life goes.
They've had major impact.
You'll probably hear more about religion going forward. And hopefully we don't espouse the same things. I'm glad we talked about that Vishnu and that Hinduism is a very colorful religion. It's still got doom and gloom. And
there's good people out there. We're not out there.
The new pope looks like
the problem is like good people. Pope. The problem is in today's society is like the people that are good Christians or Jews or even Muslims, like that's not on the TV. Like Muslim gave a meal of food to a Christian that needed it because they're dying on the street. What we see is this Christian's killing this Jew, or I don't know if that still happens these days, but definitely this is Muslims killing these Christians. That's all over the news here in America. At least in comparison to people doing good, and we know you're out there. We're not coming down on you. This is just our observation of what we're fed on a daily basis. And
so apparently religion is a huge force, and it's going to keep moving down that bracket if no one stops it. So.
Yes, it is. Well, let's find out who they're going to play, Hall.
Right, let's look at that.
Number 7, Humor, up against number 10, Meditation. A little bit lighter. Maybe memes come and play for Humor. And
that reminds me, why did Helen Keller's dog jump off a cliff? You would too, if your name was... Sorry. Laughter is the best medicine, period, in a discussion. I always say die laughing. It seems kind of ironic to people who live very hard lives. It's difficult for them to find any humor in anything, and maybe I've lived a very soft life and things are more comical. For me, it is the only salve in this world. And I think also eliciting a laugh is involuntary response on behalf of the person who's laughing. Generally, they don't have a chance not to laugh. That's a skill. That's an art. So humor, comedy and tragedy are one and the same as far as on par with each other. And we just managed to put humor up here. So,
although I think everyone enjoys laughter, even I think the most serious person in the world will at least have an occasional laugh.
Yeah.
But the actual humor is not universal. Mm-hmm. Laughter might be universal, but humor is not. What triggers someone to find something funny is just so insanely different from person to person.
Yeah.
It's subjective. It's cultural. It's that the religious thing comes in. All that.
You break the boundaries.
You have sexual jokes. You have religious. You have politics. But the great thing about all of these things is the thing that I find most fascinating is it gives individuals a platform to. I almost think kind of give a sermon on their belief system in a lighthearted way. But I think some of my favorite comedians, you'll laugh, but they kind of make a point and they change your perception, which I think is always fascinating. Not that that's just one aspect of humor. I mean, just being with your friends and seeing someone trip and
right,
fall.
Schadenfreude. You know, I'm in the bathroom over there, and there's a little Santa Claus pump liquid soap thing. It just made me laugh.
May.
I'm like, it's fucking May. It's in the very stark bathroom, and it's so colorful.
We had to tell them like repeatedly 3 or 4 times in 1 week to get soap down there, and they couldn't put soap in the dispenser. So they put the little Santa Claus, which is ridiculous. And I laughed about that whenever I saw it.
That's what I'm saying. So humor comes in some very odd shapes and sizes and weird places, and I think it is elicits very good vibrations among people. And like you said, it could be somebody else's misfortune. It could be a good yarn. It could just be, hey, did you see that? So it's anybody's guess. It's not prescribed to high art. It's not prescribed to Larry David. It's not prescribed to a comedian or a fucking, a mime or a clown or whatever. It's just, in general, humans have develop this sense of humor, and I don't know if other animals do.
Yeah, well, it's funny whenever you see something that's in its wrong place. That's what makes things funny.
But think about what we're doing here is like we're doing a wild card for mankind's greatest achievements, and humans have developed a sense of humor, and we have cultivated it, and it is cultural from silent pictures, Charlie Chaplin, and time immemorial before that. We talked a little about, the funny pages. There's a little piece of funny any place you can go. There's Mad Magazine, National Lampoons. Some of the greatest movie pictures are basically comedies. And you have something like romantic comedies out there trying to ruin humor for everybody. and that, I guess I'm going off on a tangent. The point is like, is this really important to mankind's survival? I think it is. I think,
What I don't even know. Whenever I even look at the tournament, and it's always even my evolution of looking at what this tournament really is.
What have we done?
It's I keep trying to go back to, or what are the things that have had the biggest impact on where we are today? And I think humor is, and that's very very specific to our species. Not that animals probably play around, and there's probably some of that still goes on, but the sophistication of that art form is a big deal. We are consumed with that. We are consumed with memes, the viral memes, movies that just even serious movies that have a twinge of humor. It's so intertwined.
Or funny movies that have quotable we're going streaking, and it's like the quotable. Nothing is more quotable than a comedy movie because everybody wants to hear that again and again, in place or not. So that's a big part of it. And so, hey, listen, you got humor on one end, which is a softening, lightened levity. What's the right word? Yeah, levity. Then you got meditation, grounding.
Yeah.
And meditation was also spiritualism and yoga. We were talking a little bit about, when we originally introduced it, we tried to kind of sweep a few into this one and say, what can we make it? If I remember correctly, it was a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah, let's kind of try to keep it pretty generalized, and we're not just talking about sitting on a cushion. I think what we're really talking about is ways of practice that just laser beam your focus to this present moment, which a lot of philosophers will say the only thing that we really have is this present moment. This is the only thing that's real right now. And when you're watching this, it's going to be real for you, but in a lot of ways it won't be real for me and Hall anymore because we won't really be there. Like in the same aspects as we are right in this moment.
Unless we are going to be transcending time and space.
But we're talking about the practices that cultivate your ability to use all of your senses to be here and to experience what's going on, rather than be caught up in your head and your own conditioning, or like the story that you just gets on that endless loop over and over and over again. That
there is a vibration, and either your record's stuck in a rut or it's moving, right? And it's playing a tune, and then sometimes it's just stuck in a rut and you need to move past that. You're playing to your own drum, I guess, is part of that. But, I don't know much enough about meditation to talk about. I just know it feels like every time you take a minute to do some deep breathing or to listen to some funky music, sitar stuff, and kind of let your mind float and then focus on a space, you can come back and you are more present. And like you said, this is all about enlightenment kind of stuff. I'm maybe not saying release your 7 chakras or something, but does mankind have a chance? Because everybody who gets into these movements, like with the meditation, some of these New Age stuff, starts to talk about love wins, and are we going to get to this level? Are humankind ever going to be high consciousness enough to deal with the fact that we are all sabotaged by our own subconscious? The way I feel, I get sabotaged by myself. So if I'm not in harmony with myself, then I'm my own worst enemy. If I can get into harmony somehow, grounded through meditation, then I'm a greater force in the world. I'm a greater force in my life, in my and that's a big part of it. And I don't think it's also, what is it? It's converse to the fact that mankind has gotten this brain, this big fucking brain, and we only use 10% of it, like they say, to this and that. But there's a lot of synapses and stuff going on. If you're not paying attention to the end result, and you're not paying attention to why you're doing this, it's all for nothing. Can we expand our consciousness?
Yeah, and if, like we were saying, at least in some aspects, it seems like religion's trending down in ways. I think if you look at probably when people go to church these days is definitely dropping from 50 years ago. But if you look at the trend here, even in the West, of meditation going up, I think it is something that's on people's radar, although it's still a very fringe practice. It's not... It's at least probably compared to 30 years ago, probably most everyone in the West now at least have heard the term meditation or have some idea of
vis-a-vis
of what it is. So there looks like there could be a trend that it continues that way. It's hard to say. I don't know if it has the power to save humanity. I think it has more power to save. To get someone to cherish their own life and see like their own experience rather than just kind of go through like just in oblivion the whole time. But they do say ignorance is bliss too. So it depends on what side of the coin you are on that meditation.
But like you said, not ignorance. Meditation is more of a singular experience. It's not a group consciousness that we're talking about. It's each person unlocking. Whereas humor is a shared concern. In that mind, I would think that humor probably takes the cake here instead of meditation, because humor is a valuable...
Yeah, I agree.
It's more crowd-sourced. What's the right word? It's just not singular, whereas each person's development is up to themselves.
Well, not only that, it's still like the impact of where we are right now. I think everyone knows what humor is.
Right.
Meditation, I think even there might be a lot more people that have heard what it is, but still don't really know what it's about. It just has
Humor's
such
more
big
of a distraction for some people, whereas meditation, you're asking people to kind of concentrate and lose it. There's no discipline in the West. There's no discipline in the world these days. There's no, meditation and philosophy and this and that. They're on the way out because, unfortunately, the attention span and shit. So, in my mind, I think we can just close the book on meditation.
But I would like to say, if I had to choose between meditation and humor every single day.
Right.
Like 11 out of 10 times I'm going to choose humor. That does not mean that I don't think meditation is valuable. They put up a good matchup, and I don't know.
Right.
See if they're
got on this list for a reason, but that's funny that you said 11 out of 10 times humor wins. 110% is what we're giving to you guys here on the Hajas and Hallro show. We hope you guys are really enjoying our little Sunday conversation. It's slow on the go. It's detailed. We're kind of just trying to hammer out a few things to get, we'd be lucky to get through 2 brackets today, and I think that's the choices we're making to try and get there. So let's skip up to the top side of the bracket now and just look at love, hate, and mythology. Okay? Love, hate, mythology. And here we kind of have a duplicate to religion, because Greek and Roman gods as the 16 seed mythology just snuck in there somehow. But mythology and storytelling is almost the predecessor to religion. So as much as we tried to leave duplicates out, it
sneak in there somehow.
But so if we had mythology and religion in the same bracket, and religion's already won, too bad for mythology. You're a 16 seed. We can just kick you in the
But they're playing maybe the most important thing that distinguishes people from all other animals is this idea of love and hate, and how it's just cherished, and how that's what we get drawn into. Like we probably men more than women love a good war movie and like to see bombs dropped on shit, and probably women a little bit more on the love side, but there's a lot of crossover, and there's a lot of divisiveness, I should say.
Decisively divisive.
Each side of that coin, and we brought it up in a previous podcast that you probably can't have the one without the other. It just really...
It's a symbiotic relationship. It's a duality. It's philosophical. But the point is, for the sake of time, I think we can just eliminate mythology and move on.
Yeah, we can get into those merits later.
Okay, and we can give it an epitaph and say, hey, sorry we never knew you. Mythology and storytelling, near and dear to my heart, because I think that is, to me, it's like, wow. But religion's in there still. So, hey, we'll just bookend that with those, because the fact of the matter is it is all just a good yarn, good storytelling. But most importantly, other animals may show the capacity to love, but humans really show a great capacity towards hatred. And I think we'll find a competitor against that particular entry.
Probably not even in the next round.
We'll see.
Let's just
what comes next?
Throwing rocks against architecture.
Throwing rocks at architecture. We're just throwing rocks at glass houses, huh? That would be that's probably throwing rocks at architecture. For the sake of, Hajas here, he came up with this one. I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? And really he's just talking about the mechanical human, the human mechanics of throwing rocks for gathering food, for protection, for sport.
Yeah. I mean, I would love someone to do some legitimate research on there, but this entry...
No, we would love for you.
There has to be someone out there that needs to think that this is at least a possibility, because this is 100%.
We're not just talking about stoning people in the Muslim world,
Hajas bro... What's that stuff called? Bro... it's not coming to me, the word. But throwing rocks... When I think back to caveman days, before the sophistication of the language as we know it today, probably before fire, we don't have predatorial limbs. There's probably some sort of strength that we have, but I can't even imagine 300,000 years ago.
The opposable thumb.
You have this,
start,
but
right?
know what? Go up against a bear. These things aren't going to get you anywhere. They're not going to get you anywhere with one-on-one combat with another animal. I think even animals that would, deer and shit like that just run away. The very first thing that started all of this is throwing rocks, and that moved into throwing spears and other
baseballs and footballs.
And then today, which is a very big part of Western culture, baseball, football, basketball. That, I think, it's so... There's no other animal except for the occasional monkey that'll throw some shit. But they're not throwing rocks to kill anyone or to protect each other. Maybe the shit has something to do with that. But
the shit hit the fan.
We're the only ones that I think have I just have to imagine we killed a lot of things with rocks in our early development that formed
including us, obviously, because that's probably
stony. I mean, a lot of witches do not like rocks.
Yeah. Because if they sink or they swim or they float, or what are they? They're made of wood.
You're not gonna
If they're rocks, they sink. But if you're gonna get stoned.
Yeah, you're not going to waste good bullets. Like 500 years ago.
Must get stoned. Well, that's up against architecture. I'm sorry, and to me, architecture, is the equivalent of summation of a lot of human endeavors put together to build spaces that are at once architecture, art, engineering. They're social gathering spaces, or there's an importance to architecture that is underlying in everything. And people notice it when they think about going by the Roman Colosseum that's still there, or they look at the Space Needle in Seattle, or somebody's trying to build the biggest fucking building in China. It's not just a matter of, let's stack as many bricks as we can up here. It turned into, can we use something outside of bricks? Can we build spaces that are more eco-friendly? Can we... And it's so ever, what's the right word? Far-reaching. The architecture, being a student of architecture, sometimes, do we take it for granted, or is it put on too much of a pedestal that it's kind of asinine? It's like, if we just had, here's a box for you, here's a box, here's a box, here's a box. If we all lived in fucking containers, would that be as much, a deal as somebody getting a house made entirely out of glass and concrete and rebar? So, and architecture followed the human accomplishments. It mirrored our technology jumps and advances too. So, in a lot of ways, I think it's a great amalgam, a great, sum total of all of human efforts is what architecture represents.
Absolutely. And I initially was going to be an architectural major. I'm a career drafter. I've done it 20 years. I use all the softwares that architects use. Like I said, Eddie Hajas' tiny house is in the tournament. I designed that and built it myself. So there's a very big part of my life that is without a doubt in architecture. And I think the shape, the shape or the container of space for people to interact in is just a fascinating subject of how you've been in, maybe you're fortunate enough to have friends that have mansions, and you go in and you just all of the space of the entranceway, and you can just kind of feel the grandeur, versus probably walking into my tiny house as much of a monument as it is. It's a small space. It's not going to have the same sort of feel. But even in that sense, even with a small space, you can create different nooks and crannies. But the one thing that so architecture definitely impacts everyone. I just don't think a lot of people are really aware of how it impacts, and I don't think a lot of people even have the consciousness. It's like something that we don't. That's not a kind of a discussion unless you're going to architectural school. I feel like
you'll see the results though. You go to an amphitheater that has too low of a ceiling, and people don't like to hang out there. Whereas you go to something that somebody designs, and people wind up just congregating there because they made a great space that people feel comfortable in, subconsciously, or somehow innately. Also, you talked about mansions. It does good taste. I mean, money doesn't buy good taste. There's plenty of McMansions and other stuff that have no great space. They have no great angles or perspective. And that's where the architect comes in. He envisions something from scratch that doesn't exist, and it's not as simple. And then there are standards. You go to a place like Santa Barbara, California, and they decide to say everything's got to look like this, and no one thinks about it. But they all say, "I love Santa Barbara. It's lovely." Well, why? Because they decided that Mission Revival, red clay roof, red tile roof is exactly what we're going to have.
There's a cohesiveness about a plan that,
and it makes everybody who's there or lives there, who passes through, they really enjoy it, but they don't know why until they see the uniformity of it and the versatility of it, but also the utility of it. I'm just going to say, if you want throwing rocks to architecture,
I'm throwing a trump card in. It's my trump card. I know it's ridiculous.
I knew that was coming.
Throwing rocks. So they're in the round of 32 against Love, Hate.
They're going to come up against Love, Hate, but I love it. Love rocks. Love rocks. Eddie, I gotta say, I respect you for that, and this is kind of why it's our fucking podcast. It's like, and it's probably not for nothing. There's probably some anthropologist out there who just had a, he just went, he's like, oh my god, I love this. Like, I've been trying to say about slurring rocks forever, and then some architecture guy is just like, oh my god, architecture is so overrated. I can't get a job.
If they were up against any other team, I'd probably have a hard time.
You had something against architecture, but
I don't. I really
don't
have anything. I just have so much. Throwing rocks is such like an instrumental, evolutionary, whatever.
It is a wild card. I'll give you that.
Super wild.
It's from our wildest nature. So.
And I love architecture. I'm not saying that. It's just that you got a bad draw. And everyone has a little Trump in them, and mine's coming out right now.
Yeah, you're right. Bad.
Throwing rocks is not fake news.
Well, right below that, as a 512, you have erotica and sugar. Now, erotica is maybe even underrated at this point. I mean, we know that prostitution's the oldest job in the book. We know that there's a Kama Sutra. There's friezes of people humping in Italian clay and tile underneath Mount Pompeii. The Chinese, Japanese. There's just too much preponderance, and now we have fucking Pornhub. We have the internet. The internet thanks itself to porn. Yeah. You had Playboy and you had the San Fernando Valley and porno and.
Well, look at every single woman from the weather woman on your local news to celebrities at whatever event, like whatever the movie board events.
We had the Kardashians.
Everyone is all sexed up in the Western world.
But we're talking about the objectification of women, and we're actually talking about the art form, and that's why we said erotica.
Erotica
it's not just porno. Yes. It could be fucking comic book porno like they do over there in Japan, whatever it's called. And the thing is it's just. It's part of the propagation of our species because it goes to that end.
Well, yeah, and then you have the kink in it that other animals, I don't think they have that draw, but we know you're out there. And now there's going to be a lot of people that are very conservative out there, but we know you're out there.
The conservative people do behind closed doors probably worse, and that's what some of this stuff comes from. Is it is taboo. It has been counterculture. Or something that's done in the shadows, and yet everybody's got a boudoir photo or something like that, and now it's dick pics and selfies and this and that. It's just it keeps things fresh, I guess. But the main thing is it keeps people boning and propagates the species, I guess. And I
everyone
think,
likes to change it up a little
right.
now and then.
So
and they're going up against sugar.
But see,
that's how sugar plays. It's like, just me, little sugar. Just eat a little piece of cake. It's nothing big.
Sugar is the scourge of humanity right now at some level. I mean, it's not cancer, but they put sugar in everything. It's a highly addictive, high fructose corn syrup. We're talking about you, Monsanto, although you're on the other side of the bracket. They find a way to put sugar in everything as
beets, corn.
It's interesting because it's like nowadays there ain't nothing sweet about sugar, but it's a player. I mean, we had salt there. Salt got taken out of petroleum. If you thought about these elemental substances that humans use, I mean, petrol and salt and sugar are all part of that. But sugar, it's just not sweet enough to beat eroticism. It's a legalized
cocaine,
right?
Basically, what it is.
It is a stimulant. It is some kind of substance, and it's artificial, and they put it in places that you wouldn't expect, and they make you desire it even more. And then they figure out no sugar added, or fake sugar, which is even worse. It's like, what the fuck is the point? Just they got sugar Mexican Coca-Cola versus Coke Zero.
You know how hard it is to get off sugar? I feel like I have a decent diet most of the time. Like, I went a month without eating sugar. Like, I couldn't... If you're going to do that, all packaged foods, gone. Like, anything that's in a package, like, you have to start with raw vegetables and basically raw meat and go from there. You got to throw away bread, unless you're, I don't know what I guess you can eat those stupid little crackers, like flaxseed crackers, which are delicious. I'm not saying they're stupid, but, like, it's
Was
so...
Max? what is it? Something like
difficult to get. Even salad dressing. Look on your Newman's Own salad dressing or whatever. Aunt Annie's organic. Number 2 will probably be organic cane sugar. We're talking about just pure, refined sugar. We're not talking about fruit juice and stuff like that. Right. It's everywhere, and no matter how good you think you are.
Juice, it's like contains 5% juice. How insulting is that?
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, if you get a Capri Sun, it doesn't say juice anywhere, so I can see that, you know. But yeah, so I mean, sugar to me is a player. But if petrol can beat out salt, I don't know if petrol could have beat out sugar. It probably would have too. So it's irrelevant. But as a 12 seed, it looks like sugar's gonna take a back seat.
It's
yield porn. Like the horn dogs to the pervs out there. I mean, what we're looking for is eventually we want to see erotica and love-hate come up to each other, but maybe that's, you know, we'll get there later.
Well, they're going to have to face the winner of this next matchup, which I don't know. These are pretty
this
big
is a very
players.
Fascinating thing. We're talking about timekeeping versus artificial intelligence. And what kind of seats did they get? They got 4 and 13. So timekeeping makes sense at a 4, you know. It used to be a 1, probably, you know, not more than 200 years ago. Timekeeping was paramount. It was adamant. Now, I just look on my cell phone, or I have a decent impression, because I live in the same place all year round, what time it is, you know.
But it still runs our lives.
It does run our lives.
Whether, like,
when you show up to
right
work,
there or not.
When you can get happy hour, when McDonald's stops serving breakfast, you know, all those things. But when I started talking about timekeeping, Hajas, I was really talking about, and this is kind of why we did this thing to begin with, is what do we take for granted? And I just been blown away by somebody who is a clockmaker. Not digital time. Analog time. You know, how that was ever constructed and made, I don't know.
Be well before the modern day machines that can cut and grind steel down to the thousandth of an inch, right? We're talking about small, little, tiny gears that were handcrafted and put together that just go on and on and on, right? As long as the battery. I don't know if there's probably non-battery.
Swiss precision or something like that. They used to tell us about. Nowadays, no one even gives a shit about a cuckoo clock or anything like that. I don't think half the people know what happens when the church bells ring. If they realize that they're telling you it's 12:15 or it's 1 o'clock or whatever, and that's part of timekeeping too. I mean, school bells ring. It's just the overall system of time. You're right. Is a man's construct, a human construct.
Without a doubt, and it can suck you into places that keep you from being spontaneous and make you be a slave to this thing. But at the same time,
yeah.
Speaking of time, it also allows us to be sophisticated in how we interact with people. When I say, Hall, I'm going to be at this address at 12:30 to do this podcast. It's not like we're just floating around the world just happen to cross paths.
Right. It's not as abstract as, you know, although it is a very abstract notion because it's really based on the number of the revolution of the sun around the earth. Nothing more than that, right? But the actual
and the rotation of the axis.
Right. The sun. We'll just say it's based on sun. So you take that and you say it's a schedule, it's a calculus, it's 7 days a week, 5 days a week, work, play, school, whatever, 9 to 5. Just think about how many different iterations it happens that way. You have people that set their clocks forward on purpose for them not to be late because they can't.
Strategy.
Because they can't. Somebody has to be on time. You think about the movies where they synchronize their watches to explode something at 0600 hours or something like that. Time.
Show up 15 minutes
and time stops for no man. I guess that's the obvious kind of real kernel there is that man has created or harnessed time, but time doesn't stop. Time doesn't do man any favors.
It doesn't, and it really, in a lot of ways, doesn't exist either because it's based on the rotation of the axis and going around the sun. I mean, that's it. And at the same time, it exists.
Well, in the fourth and fifth dimensions, it doesn't exist at all. But,
well, I thought time was the fourth dimension.
The time is the fourth dimension. That's what I'm saying. It's everything as it was and as it will be. in the fourth dimension. So it's just
if you're going to move, time exists because to move takes time. So
there you go.
Ponder that. But it's going against number 13, artificial intelligence.
AI. I posited this one. I put this out there. This was one of my entries because I said to myself, with virtual reality and artificial intelligence coming on the scene, it definitely deserves to be way down there. This fucking 12, 13.
Well, it's a newcomer without a doubt, but like there's not a whole lot of things that or this might be the newest entry in the entire bracket. Like I don't know.
Memes are more recent than
probably AI. The concept of AI it's probably gone back. You can say
it's
back
a wild card. So like you said, you just said invention. It's not in the invention side of the bracket for a reason, because it is kind of recent. We don't know where it goes, and we really don't know the applications right now.
We don't know where it's going.
Yeah, we don't know where it goes. Where it's going to end. We have Watson, the smart computer with IBM. You know, we have ideas that Terminator and all these other Skynet and Teledyne are going to create beings that are going to wind up realizing, once they get self-realization, they're like, well, I'm 10 times better than humans. I'm going to take them out first, you know? Like, I don't know. I don't know if humankind needs the Terminator to ruin each other, but the AI is interesting because it creates the possibility also of transcending all the other human emotions and just being smart about things.
Yeah, I think no one knows where. We have no idea. I mean, you even have Elon Musk saying that it's probably a dangerous endeavor to start going down. But guess what? It's way too fascinating and compelling for a lot of scientists out there to stop working on finding out what's going to happen with all this. Like Battlestar Galactic, that is an AI story for the ages. And
the new one, right? Because the old one wasn't really that.
Yeah, I never watched the old one, but the new one that's my opinion of it. I think probably maybe other people might interpret it a little bit differently, and I'm not going to give any... But my point in being is there's always a natural progression to better yourself, and I think we on this planet, for whatever reason, we don't like have a direction. We didn't like decide to like grow like some sort of claw hand that just can destroy anything. Like for whatever reason, like our mind is really what distinguishes us in our surroundings. So I think we like to recreate things. So we want to recreate the mind because it's so fascinating, but we don't even know shit about the mind. We're like so dysfunctional on this planet right now, and creating something that, like you said, maybe it eradicates all of our dysfunction, or maybe like the dysfunction gets built into it and like is just completely chaos. But
that's probably a story for longer. You know, in 10 years we can revisit AI, but it doesn't have enough chops to beat timekeeping right now.
Oh man, that's tough. It's looking at that. I'm still having
to me, I think. You know, AI is a stronger entry than timekeeping because it is distinctly human, and it's not just that we are sitting there and reacting to an outside force like the sun and the rotation of around the world. You know, it's one thing we take it for granted for certainly getting our time. You know, how we get our time and how easy it is for us to determine that. So nowadays it's almost passé. I was really focused on clockmaking and calendar keeping and how the Mayans did it almost to a T, you know, isolated from other cultures, and they had the same calendar, and everybody's got different calendars. So that to me is a shared human experience. But where we're going with AIs to me speaks to me as a huge upset against timekeeping. I mean, just because we just can't even, we can nibble around the edges of what we're basically talking about is man creating man-like consciousness.
It's the pinnacle of where we're at now.
It's godlike. It's like God making.
Yeah. If AI goes through, like, I mean, if you're going to talk about one thing that would just totally eradicate religion, it would be AI. Like, if somehow, like you said, you can transport your being into like some sort of microchip and then into some robotic body,
right?
Like, man, like religion, it completely changes the way it expresses itself right now. at the very least.
Who made you?
And I thought timekeeping. I whenever we like started putting together this whole tournament and we were talking, timekeeping was one of my favorite entries.
Yeah.
For the some of the reasons. I'm more of like the Mayan calendar side instead of the watch side, but it's all remarkably fascinating and a remarkable human achievement that has.
Right. Does the threat of AI now and the possibility, just the clear possibilities of where AI could go, does that outshine timekeeping right now?
After this conversation, I think, I'm good.
That's what I thought.
They have an upset. It's an upset, fellas.
Big time upset.
And ladies.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that, you don't know what the end game of AI is, but I think we've pretty much mastered timekeeping until it comes to Marty McFly and Dr. Brown doing his thing. If we're going back and forth in time, that's the only difference. The final countdown. I mean, we have what, two more, and one more bracket to go.
No, we have two more games, but AI, just to round that off, we'll be playing erotica in the round of 32,
which is funny because now they have artificial pussies and stuff like that too, and they have virtual reality sex.
Westworld,
things of that
excellent
nature.
On tonight.
Okay.
Number 6, war against number 11, Genghis Khan.
Genghis the Mongol. What have we done, Eddie? We've created a real monster here. This is like the biggest pickle out there.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is. I mean, there are a lot of amazing warlords out there, right? There's been a lot of amazing battles. You had Alexander the Great. I think most people will put him number 1 if you look at the list. Basically dominated almost all of Europe, right? Was pushing into Asia pretty severely. Pushed into North Africa. His library was just, it's still talked about today as a center for learning. And then you have United States. We're talking
about the empires. I mean, obviously you can't skip Roman Empire, the British Empire, the Spanish colonial empire. What we're talking about is the act of war versus one good goddamn, because we're not talking about why Genghis is in here, because Genghis was just, we took a fancy to him, because 1 out of every 10 Chinese people has his blood in it, because he did it so well. He wasn't about building libraries or this and that. He was just like, take it, make it yours. So, to Alexander the Great, I wasn't aware of that. I was actually fascinated. I wanted to follow that down a little bit. But it's a digression from where we need to be.
Well, we're talking about war. I'm just kind of talking about war, too.
I mean,
so
there's there's Idi Amin, there's fucking Hitler, there's, Hirohito, there's, some fascist guys over there in Italy. I can't remember their names. Down south in America, Pinochet. I mean, dictators aren't necessarily warlords, right? But
no,
they command the armies that do all the war making. Right?
That was just my entry, and then to go beyond the leaders, right, is just the concept of war,
right.
Of all, like we said before, the belief system of your culture and your people, to impose that on people, to control people. That's one aspect
Nationalism.
Of war. Getting resources, getting the best land possible for farming and hunting and fishing and all of that, like taking land, taking that land for your people so your people can survive. That's an aspect. Like, there's the aspect of those people taking your land for all those good things, and there's a small group of survivors that make it through it, and they're like, fuck these people, they killed my grandparents, my grandma, they're going down, and we're going to overthrow them. They're it goes.
It's a greedy aspect to it, because people said, I have this, now I want more, I want more. I want to be remembered as the guy who ruled everything from Kamchatka, Russia, to Constantinople, like Genghis Khan did, or his empire, his successors. But the whole aspect of war, I think, goes back to kind of love and hate. animals can love each other, but they don't really hate each other. Humans have this innate aspect of like you talked about. My blood has been spilled. An eye for an eye. We're going to go spill it over there, and it becomes very a reciprocity, a revenge thing, and then it's also maybe it's a survival of the fittest. It's we need resources. We're going to war with you guys. You don't see eye to eye. You're not a push. It's like it's also kind of a school bully kind of thing. He wants your milk, and you're either going to have to fight him for it, or you're going to have to give it up. And a lot of those aspects get played out on larger and larger levels. War in general is like this huge construct in mankind because of now a military-industrial complex. Because warlords and other people have learned how to make money off of it and to subject people and to create kind of a status quo, or what's the right word? To create a caste system of people. You have your warriors, like the Americans. We're so proud of our armed forces and all the indentured servants that go into America's armed forces. It's all part of an economy. It's all part of a class system and a ruling class, the people who sell the weapons, etc.
There's so many sides to that
almost like
coin.
We have the longest war going right now, Eddie. Afghanistan is the longest war going in American history, and it's asinine. It's barely called a war. It's just basically an occupation and a fracas. I mean, and I don't want to take light of people who've got to be on the ground fighting out of there, but the point is this isn't World War II. This isn't World War I. This isn't, we're not talking about Grenada either. I mean, so these days what it became is it's a fucking cash grab.
Well, I think it's interesting for us in America because none of us, there's people that are in the service in our country, right, that have experienced war, but the rest of us have never experienced the intensity of war for a day in our life. Maybe you get in a fight when you're a kid on the playground. That's as close as you're going to get. But all of our analysis of all of this and how we even try to wrap our heads around it is all based on reading out of books or most likely watching the news. And so I think it's always kind of I always find it strange whenever I try to comprehend war, and then I think of the Middle East, right? You have Syria and Iran and all that, and it's just like, and whenever when I try to wonder like what it must be like to live there, in the course of all of those people's lifetimes in all of those areas, probably like 80 to 90%, unless you live like in the middle of like buttfuck ruralville, like you probably hear numerous bombs on a daily, if not like at least a couple times in your lifetime. Just like wars, like you're just there, and there's this your own over there. It's even like kind of stranger because it's like your own people are killing you. But that's like. War is such a bit, like right now, people are getting shot up in so many places in the world right now. And it's been like that, I think, in the Middle East forever. It seems
like that because Syria feels like the new Beirut, and the stuff that's coming out of there is unbelievable. And it is kind of like a power grab for somebody there.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like brother on brother.
And then we're over there, and Russia's over there.
They're used to it. They're used to it almost. They live in fucking rubble. They live in rations. They live as refugees, and we don't know anything about that. So to your point, like we don't have war on our soil necessarily unless you live in the south side of Chicago or in some of the projects where it feels a lot like war.
The funny thing about war is a lot of times it is just about your own people killing each other, and it's
what human brought to the construct. I had one bracket submitted by an entrant that basically just wore out. It just wars the. And they're almost like the might versus right thing. And that kind of goes down to what human culture is all about. It's like, even King John or somebody else said, the pen is mightier than the sword. Because the ideals and the history and the writing of a civilization or culture is more important. But then you'll always have the warlords who are like, off with his head, chop this guy to pieces, blow him up. The end result is his might is right in a lot of ways. And this whole thing could devolve into a war. I mean, any given day, we're on the, one person pushes a button. There goes society. There goes civilization. There goes, we're just dissolved into a war a war state. and that to me is the counter of culture, but it is a huge concern, and it's something that's legitimately human. War takes over this whole planet.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, animals, ecosystems, whatever, nature, take a back seat. We need to make a road through here to get our tanks. We need to do the Battle of the Somme or something like that in Europe, those world wars. I mean, everything's decimated. Chemical warfare, decimated. I mean, bombs up to the point where we're going to blow up half the earth, decimated. So war is a huge deal. So does Genghis Khan and his effect on humanity equal or rival our propensity to do war? And I think it does.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot that we need to go in with Genghis Khan, but there's a couple things that are insanely massive talking points. Massive. Now, just on a smaller note, if you really want to listen to about Genghis Khan, I actually think you need to pay for the podcast. It used to be free, but Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, it's about I think it might be 10 to 15 hours worth of excellently put together podcast material on this man, the culture, the way he paints a picture has obviously changed my perception about this man more than most people on the planet. But the way that the original way that they're just so successful at the time is that culture. They lived what they call on the steppe, which is basically right at the foothills of the plateau and up the plateau. So
Mongolia
in particular, very tribal people, and they when they started domesticating horses, their kids would be on horses from the time they were 2-3 years old, learning how to shoot, learning how to ride a horse, and by the time they were 4 or 5 years old, they're already shooting bow and arrows. So at that time,
riding horses.
It's
a warrior state is what you're talking about.
Developed the technology that no one in the world had at that time, and the way that they were able to move and their marksmanship was just uncanny to anything. The destruction,
unrivaled, unparalleled, yeah.
Without a doubt. The destruction that they've caused and at the speed from I don't know how. I think this is bullshit, but I'm going to just go with it anyways. But they
brought to you by some bullshit.
By one source that I read, it actually the Earth's temperature went down 2 degrees because he killed so many people. That now, the only reason that I say
there's body heat, right? Well,
the only reason that I say it's kind of bullshit, I was when I think there was only 1 billion people on the Earth, maybe even less than 1 billion. Now we have 8 billion, so the temperature, maybe people, I guess based on that, maybe people are causing global warming.
Right.
Just people, not even the. Anyways.
The heat that we give off is global warming, and we're not even willing to admit that at overpopulation. So, Genghis Khan...
The most fascinating point, though.
And that's good, just to your point. There are 3 things that cause big corrections in humanity's history. Force of God, act of nature, right? Famine or disease, and war is the third one. And there you go, war, Genghis Khan. It's hey, we're going to just take care of a whole bunch of population. So... You were saying?
And the last one, I really want to look up the number. Genghis Khan boned so many women.
He sired a bunch of sons. I'm pretty sure it is 2% of Chinese people have Genghis Khan in their bloodline. Chinese males is what it is. But it's something like 10% of, it's 2%, sorry.
8% they're saying.
8% of Chinese.
8% of Chinese people. Right here, I think 1 in 200 men, direct descendants of Genghis Khan. 1 out of fucking 200 people.
Right.
And so, over there, it's 1 out of 10-ish. 1 out of 10 people. One person was responsible for that. What's 200%? It's 0.5%, right? One person is 0.5% of the whole population, which is I don't know, how many hundreds of millions of people.
Right, and considering now China is basically, if you say there's 10 million people in the world and China and India both have 1 million or 1.5 million, that's basically saying that he's
like that
one
country.
half of 10%. So he's basically 2%. That's the point, So
absolutely amazing. So, of course, that's why he got in. If I didn't watch that podcast, he never gets on there. But
so who did it better? I mean, did Genghis master the warfare thing from start to finish? He mastered warriors. They harnessed it. They empire builded. He had the gout. We know that. So. I guess my point is to see it. We avoided humans at all costs, like one human. And I thought maybe Tesla would show up, some Einstein shit here or there. Tom Brady might have made the list, but I digress. Sorry, that didn't really pass. So,
but he was
Genghis
the one and
was the
only
one
individual that got in.
Does he have any lasting power against war itself? I'm prone to say so. I mean, it's like he's such a great guy, and we just got to keep going with it. I mean. He by the way, he got rid of art. So, just so you know, instead of...
Not only is...
This could have been art versus war, which would have been a pretty interesting concept, but what would you have thought would have won art versus war?
Well, I think it'd be equally as hard.
Right, because, art is the reason why people fight wars. Art is part of culture. It's one of the biggest pieces... It's sorely missing on this list. Now architecture's gone. What are we going to do? So now we got Genghis, and this revisionist history is a lot of people hate the Khans. A lot of people despise them. A lot of people feared them, for no other reason. He was the original Viking. I mean, he was the guy who was coming to town, and you couldn't stop it. He's unstoppable force. No immovable objects up through his own, successor line, and the way that. The family split.
Well, you just have to be insane to get to where he even got to in the first place. Like, it's hard to find a successor.
We're not saying he's the greatest human being ever. No, we're not saying that.
Impact.
We're just saying the impact.
But we have to go back to war just in general right now, and there's just so much war going on right now. The whole Middle East thing is being. So many people are getting affected by that.
Right.
And we're still so inundated.
Bob Marley made a song called War. He said, until the philosophy that holds one race superior and another inferior.
And,
and he basically went and talked about war is also symptomatic. What the Bob Marley song is the haves and the have-nots. The fact that humanity is so divided at every level.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's religious or geographic or socio-political or definitely economic, that creates these kind of wars. The war is the quest for balance at some level or greed imbalance. I mean, war's probably not going away.
It's not. It's just, it's so here. I mean, Genghis has passed away 500 years ago, and war is as prevalent today as
they want us to make a decision.
They do, but this is the toughest one.
We'll
but I actually, I have to go with war just because it's still so prevalent. As much as my heart really is into Genghis Khan, I just feel like war is still.
Well, war it is.
So,
then I was ready to play a game of rock paper scissors just to get it out there, but we can go war. That's perfect. I think war is an unstoppable force in humanity, and everybody has these pie in the sky moments that says we're all going to be enlightened and get past it. We're never going to get past it. So,
AI might leave us that.
War's going to come up against music or fame.
Yeah, this is our last matchup.
Last part of the wild card bracket. This is where it gets wild, man. It's like music, fucking Beethoven, Chinese music, like whatever, soul, jazz, hip hop, fucking classical music, whatever. Music is as music does. Music is one of the universals, and it's also one of the most fantastic things. Have we talked about like timekeeping?
Talk about humor. Like I feel like it's just like
people can write music. There's sheet music. It's not just 3-minute love ballads or whatever. It's long sonatas. I mean, it's operas.
It's Metallica.
Right, but the point is just like somewhere along the lines, humans have. This is it's the only art form left on here, first of all. So I'm prone to just say, fuck it, we got to take it because it's amazing. But yeah, we all like music in our day-to-day life. Whistle While You Work. There are certain songs that everybody stands up and cheers for, like fucking Neil Diamond, or I don't know what it is. It's just, they're anthems, what they are. And we have, everybody's got a Star Spangled Banner or a fucking national anthem to boot. Music is universal.
And then you have, like, music that just defines, like, moments of your life.
Right.
Like, I remember, like, the beginning of grunge. Like, when I listened to, like, Alice in Chains and Nirvana and Soundgarden, I just, like I can physically feel like a 15 or 16-year-old fucking teenage boy. Like, it was like in Dr. Dre, like, getting drunk with my, like, right around college and all that shit. So, and then...
Yeah, they kind of set the tone, like, for your lifestyle.
Whether you and your partner or girlfriend, like, have your song type of thing, I don't feel like I've had my song, but there's definitely songs out there that, like, I'll listen to and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember I was dating then.
Right, that's like, shout out to Katie G. She just said that to me today. They're playing our song, which is funny because our song is maybe like 50 years old. It's Wouldn't It Be Nice by the Beach Boys. And that's like our little touchstone song, Yeah.
And it gives you that charge. That's the thing of music. It's like this natural, like,
gives you a charge,
aphrodisiac, or like speed, or like what I mean. It comes in so many different shapes and sizes and forms. Like you can have your upper musics. You can have your tripped out Pink Floyd music. You can have like your Beethoven, Mozart, all intellectual type music, and there's this. It's just such a nice, like, kind of overlay on life. It's not completely evasive, but there's a driving force behind it.
Is there any way to categorize it, though? Because, I mean, there's bad music, categorically. There's terrible fucking music. And there's copycat music, there's cheap music, there's cornball music, there's boring fucking music. I mean, music isn't all great, but there's something for everybody with music, I guess, is the point. Because, I know the grunge movement, and I kind of shied away from it, or even kind of ran away from it, because, if everybody likes grunge, I gotta find something else, Or things like the Beastie Boys, or the Beatles, like, they reinvented music throughout their albums. They are like a formative bands in my life, because, like, throughout my growth and my catharsis and this and that, I could see it happening with them, and they would be the anthem, or whatever the better word is for it, for my adolescence, and moving on. And everybody feels like that. And then people get fucking, like you said, people get their own music, or like think about music like TV show music songs. Like everybody's got like a theme song like Cheers or something like that, and it throws you right in there. Like everybody knows that. It's a touchstone. So music is one of the greatest human achievements, without a doubt. The people that we haven't even mentioned, like fucking Amadeus Mozart, or I don't know, some of the other people who are really formative, moving music to the place it is, where nowadays it's just basically like, I got a band, I got a guitar, I got a drummer, and it can be anything. And some people do it great, and some people don't do it great. And one band does it one way, and they get famous, and the other band you'll never hear from again.
I don't even know if there's a culture that exists that's on this earth right now, even if they haven't had outside contact of the newer humans, right?
Yeah, maybe
but like
the
Aborigines had their own forms of music, which is very fascinating. The song, I think they're called song lines or song paths. Worth researching if you want to learn about it out there. The shamans in South America use music for spiritual and whatever psychedelic trip navigation. Even all the Native Americans, right? Chinese have their like ping ping ping.
Yeah, it's ping ping ping. That's exactly what it is.
But it's so ingrained in it's like one of the very original form. It's another one of those originals. Right. You can go back and it's like these would be like one of the top 10 first first things that we've created that we've kept with us the whole time.
So think about music, and we've talked about a few. Music makes people famous. Like if you get good and then they Elvis Presley you and they turn you into some rock star, or you're like the Shakespeare of music, like Beethoven was. There's a fame to it. So music is up against fame, and famous, celebrity is what we're talking about. But famous people, they really are an interesting concept because hero worship, human beings really assigning importance to other more famous human beings, not more important human beings, but they're just more famous for some fucking reason. If they like, Amelia Earhart, who Charles Lindbergh, some guys who did some stunts back in the day. If they're like Hannibal, who did his elephants through the Italian Alps, and Alexander the Great and Cleopatra, and their age-old story. That's some kind of fame, isn't it? I mean, that's
everything. It goes everywhere. Every single category of people has a famous person. Sometimes based on their merits, but in this day and age, fame is it's kind of gone out of control. You have your athletes in almost the whole world. Like we have our sports in the West, but the real European football has their athletes that
football.
You have cricket, so many sports stars, are
they're completely
bigger,
anonymous, but they're in America, but they'd be bigger in worldwide. Yeah.
Regardless, but the thing that I've always found, and I love sports. Don't get me wrong, but I've always just found it so funny for a grown man to go up to another grown man, sometimes them being younger, and say, "Can you put your name on a piece of paper?" It's so, it blows my mind. Now, if you're that guy, and that's your thing, then we live in America. You're free to do whatever. But it's just such a strange, concept for me.
And then want to be like, I've been in contact with this person. I've met this person.
Yes.
How would you figure it out? Before a selfie camera. You get their autograph. I mean, it's one thing to have Babe Ruth's autograph on a baseball. No matter what, that's amazing. And depending on how old that guy was to get Babe Ruth's autograph, back in that day, that seems to me to be okay. Nowadays, who gives a shit about getting Pete Rose's autograph on a baseball? But at least he's older than us, right? You go out and chase a young NBA star making 570 times more than you are a day, and say, hey, dude, can I get your autograph on my little basketball card or on your jersey or whatever? And it's hero worship. That's what I started off with. So fame is interesting, but it also there's a self-deprecating aspect to it because humans start to ascribe more importance to people who are famous. And nowadays, I think that is actually really part of the decline of Western civilization, vis-a-vis the Kardashians and some other stuff where people are just so they're not self-important, but the reality TV aspect of it has made people into demigods.
Yeah.
And only because they're famous do people care, because it's how do famous people operate? Is it because the money or this and that? And we talked about it. Musicians, they grow up and they become famous, and they're selling out fucking Tom Petty type stuff, and they just started out strumming a guitar. They were just...
Unless you're Milli Vanilli.
Right, Milli Vanilli was faking the funk. Unless you're Michael fucking Jackson, who was the youngest member of some boy group who wound up being the shining star, turning the thing on his head, turning into himself. He had fame and music in his palm of his weak-ass hand. And, it burnt him both to the ground. It was a destructive force, I guess, is the point.
Yeah, and now I think the other thing that's it's a very new thing with the advent of the internet is you have these... You don't need to go through TV or the radio to get your fame anymore, or do something crazy to get 5 seconds of fame. You can have a YouTube channel or a podcast like this. Anyone,
there you go,
and you can be in you can be a celebrity with no backing. That's happening. Lots of people they actually just had. I heard on the radio the other day that they had they were asking a bunch of little kids what they want to be when they grow up. And I don't know if it was number one. It might not have been number one, but it's 2 or 3. It was be famous on YouTube. 7-year-old kids.
That's
which is so but that's that need for attention. We want attention so bad. Like,
there's a reason why fame's on this list. It's like, it's not something to be trifled with, because everybody wants it, all the way up to the fucking president of the United States. You know, everybody desires it. Now, is it a certain amount of, like you said, like, attention-seeking, self-aggrandizing?
It has to be amazing, to have, like, the love, like, of, like, millions of people. That has to be, like, such a, like, an interesting existence.
People like me. They really, really like me. Or, you live...
Without even having that concept, though, like, just, like, people just liking you. It just have to be even athletes, it have to be amazing to go out there.
We had the royal wedding yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And a
Bloodline.
A semi-black chick got married to a full-on ginger, son of dead Diana, brother of the other guy. And Americans and everybody else is still, like, into it. And, like, the royals have no fucking bearing whatsoever on anything. But it's still a good show, jolly-o, and they love that shit. And that speaks to fame, like, all the way around the world. Like, they couldn't wait for this kind of... It's a wedding. It's
of people that we don't know. Like, I don't know them at all.
They don't have any consequence.
I'm sure they're great people, but, like, they're no more important. They're way less important than, like, Hall is to me, or, like, my friends, like... And it's just so weird, like...
But that's what's so funny, that people put that much emphasis on that. Did they turn around and call their mother, or did they go out and fall in love at the bar last night and get married to somebody that's going to affect their lives? No. They're living vicariously, so it becomes this kind of very sad, or like, it's pathetic almost. The people who make somebody famous, by proxy, if they're not doing themselves any good... then it's a one-way street, Yeah. You're only piling on for them, and I
we're
just
definitely
don't think it does anybody good.
Yeah.
Buying fucking magazines at the grocery store counter to read about celebrity breakups or this and that. Yeah. I mean, it's just, to me, it is fascinating when people want to see, especially when you come from a place where nothing is going on. And nowadays, something's going on everywhere you want it because it's on the internet. And like you said, if you don't like it, you can go out and make your own on the internet nowadays, which is important if people desperately need fame to escape, and they're not talented enough to be a ball player, and they're not talented enough to be a musician,
or be born with royal blood,
or not talented enough to be born like an accident mistake. Fame can get people places. You can be a cool finder. You can be an ambassador for things. Just out of being cool enough for other people to say, "Hey, you're famous for that."
Now, there's a big difference. I think the fame that we're used to and accustomed to is like what we just described is probably 80%, 90% of the fame out there. Now, there are people out there that are famous that are, like, also inspirational, that, like, you, like, see them and it's like, oh, they accomplished that. Right. They're a normal person. They accomplished that, and they, like, give you drive to do that. And that's a good kind of fame, but that's I think a much smaller percentage, because I don't even know of a magazine or a website. I actually looked this up at one point. I was like, how can I just find about, like, really cool, like people that kicked ass that came out of nowhere? And there's not, like, a magazine or a publication with them. But you have Cosmopolitan, and you have Gossip this and Gossip that, and you have tons and tons of that, which is based on, like, just bullshit, in my opinion, bullshit attributes and values of fame. Just like they're basically, most of the time, they either they fucking look hot as hell, very attractive, or they're just provocative, right?
They're provocative. They speak the right way for people to say, "Hey, I wish I could talk like that." So it comes to be kind of a wish I could live vicariously once again. I mean, there are people who accomplished a lot of stuff, like mountain climbers, or and they write books about them, or somebody who coded something that wound up being the most important computer code, or Steve Jobs would come to mind. I mean, he was famous even though he was just a businessman. There's a validity to that. They put George Washington on everything. Like, his fame stems from the fact that he's the founding father of this nation that we live in, and he was the picture for, what's the right word I'm looking for? He was the poster boy for that. And being a poster boy is kind of part of the fame thing. It's the whole hero worship thing, you need, and it's a human construct. So this might not be as trifle as we think it is, because it's been happening a long time. right? So you have fame and you have music. Music certainly breeds famous people. Music's for everybody. Everybody can have a piece of music. Anybody can pick up a drum set and try to play drums. Anybody can decide to play the flute. Anybody can go and listen to music, choose their kind of music, create their music. I mean, it's something for everybody. It's universal, and in my mind, that means music is a fame killer. It doesn't matter because you have Mariah Carey. She's famous, and she's famous for not being famous anymore because she sucks. Like these days, and she's lip syncing. She's falling from grace, but her music to begin with was most important. Now it's her fame that matters.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. I don't know. That would be a perfect example. It's like, was it the music or the fame? I don't know. This is a toss-up to me in some regards. I just don't want to see all the arts off of our list.
I think music is just too meta to go down against fame. I think fame is just such a... we definitely just belabored the fame points for the last 10 minutes. So there's a lot of... It's very part of our everyday life. If not... Probably, it's not a part of my everyday life. Not that I'm better or anything like that. I've just never got carried away in the people, like that people worship. But it's very obvious that's American entertainment is all based on that.
Well, British 100%. Entertainment would be Japanese entertainment, South Korean entertainment.
Yeah.
Who knows what goes on in China?
Yeah, and I follow sports to a certain level, so it's not like I'm completely out.
I'll say this: I was face-to-face with some of my childhood heroes, skateboarding legends from the Bones Brigade, and I could barely talk. I mean, I was just...
That's a different story, though.
But that's not...
When you're a kid.
But it wasn't fame. I mean, it wasn't their fame. They were
and that's
famous.
The inspirational...
They were the most but that's what I was trying to say. It's like mainlining that. Like, those guys changed my life for the better, and I was trying to copy them in fame. It was a famous aspect, but they're also doing what I wanted to do.
That's like the fame based on merit.
Based on merit. Good. And I guess... It happens for a lot of people. I mean, I was never a jock. I was never thinking I was going to be a baseball player, this and that. I just liked the way these people went about doing their skateboarding as a famous thing. They became this big phenomenon, but it was the skateboarding that was important, not the phenomenon. Nowadays, It's almost like the phenomenon's important, like fame, and whatever they do is not important. And that's how asinine it is. And I think it's symptomatic of the decline of Western civilization, where we watch people watch people.
Yeah, absolutely. But my vote is for music all the way. I think it's too
ding
too big of a player.
And you guys have bothered to sit through this entire epic 2-hour rant to get through an entire bracket. It just shows you what there is to talk about. And it's none of these 16 teams that we just talked about are any more or less relevant. But some of them are more important, I think, and we decided that, hey, love-hate beats mythology. Your one seed is going to move on, right? Throwing rocks, Eddie throwed the trump card. I'll just have to remember that he threw the trump card. He doesn't have any more of those. Beats architecture, lamentably, but hey, I'll take it. Especially in the wild card region. So wild card thinks wow. Speaking of wild, we got erotica versus AI. That's a 5 versus a 13 seed. So here was another upset there, big time. 5 and 13 coming your way next. Erotica versus AI. And somehow that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
The 6 seed war...
You should just call it Westworld.
I'm going to have to go and study up on that. The 6 seed war is a menace, and it does belong here against music, the 3 seed. Genghis Khan, we won't forget about you, but nice effort.
Obviously, we talked all about that fame phenomenon of infatuated with Genghis Khan.
Right. I mean, his fame is renowned. So, fame, maybe we can have a loser's bracket. We'll see. Humor at the 7 seed, we both agreed, was kind of Trump meditation no matter what. And by Trump, I mean we chose it over meditation. And last but not least, I hate to see you go memes, and I want you back. But religion, of course. So that's a whole bracket. You got some high seeds. You got one upset at least in there, and that's pretty impressive for a couple hours worth of work. And we had no idea how this was going to go. We didn't have any set agendas. I think we just talk until we're blue in the face, red in the face. It's definitely not well read, but go out there and find out what you need to find out.
Some big time matchups coming in that next round.
That's
for the wild card.
That's what's so intriguing about this entire process. We couldn't wait to see it. It was one thing to get the thing loaded. Now, as the cookie crumbles, it's funny to see how the next couple pairings and the possibility that you could have love versus erotica coming up, love-hate versus erotica. If it goes the right way, you could have war versus religion, or it could be music versus humor, and artificial intelligence versus rocks, or any number of those combinations. So stay tuned for some more conversations. Hajas, Hallro.
High, low, no show.
Yeah, no mo for this show. God damn, that was a wild card bracket.
Until next time.
Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.